Hello guys, how you doing? Kasim here. Hope you're having a good week. I hope everything is okay in your life. Okay, cool. Um, welcome back again to my channel. I wanted to answer a question which I saw online, which I found really interesting, which was, would I be okay with my wife, with my other half, with my partner, doing OnlyFans? And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Maybe you might find it useful. Maybe you might be able to add some value to the quality of your life. But before I get into that, guys, if you want to help me get to 1,000 subscribers by June, please can you like and subscribe to my channel? You would be an absolute legend. Okay, so let's go into it. Would I allow my other half? Would I allow my partner to my wife to do OnlyFans? So firstly, I haven't. Well, let's begin off with this. I have an issue with the word "would I allow her" because if I have a wife, if I have a partner, I don't have to allow her to do anything because she can do whatever it is that she wants to do. She is free to make any choice that she wants to make, okay? So let's firstly begin off with that because a relationship should be two individual people coming together into a partnership where they're moving through life together but as individuals. Where it gets really confusing and causes loads of problems in relationships is where both of your identities become intact, because then if you don't know where your boundaries are, you don't know what your value system is, you don't have an individual identity, and all kinds of problems start occurring. So that's the first thing that I wanted to attack. The second thing that I would say is, absolutely, I could never be in a relationship. As far as I say I could never, but for me, I have a set of rules and a set of standards and a set of expectations for the kind of life that I want to live. And so when I say I could never, I say that as almost definitive because, of course, like with anything, I shouldn't be so, I have a philosophy which is, is to have a mind which is open to everything and is attached to nothing. But in saying that, that also means that there has to be a foundation, there has to be a layer, there has to be a sort of a foundation that cannot be moved from. And so I 100% could not be in a relationship with somebody who would do OnlyFans. And the reason is, firstly, because I couldn't see them the same way. My experience has been, and from my research, has been that when your partner does OnlyFans, you cannot see them the same way as you did before. Because number one, a lot of men, we see women as pure, right? We see women as an extension of who we are, right? Your wife is not just simply an individual alone. When you get into a partnership, she is an extension of you, meaning that when other people look at your wife and the way that she treats your children and the way that she treats you and the clothing that she wears and the places that she goes to and the way that she speaks, all of that is an extension of you, meaning that people will look at your wife and say, oh, okay, so that's what Kasim must be, meaning that if you are promiscuous as my wife, you're on OnlyFans, people inevitably are going to say, well, what the hell is Kasim's values then? What does Kasim believe in? And what I would say is that if you are somebody like me who wants to, is a generational thinker, somebody who wants to build a business, somebody who wants to inspire people, somebody who later on wants to work with kids, I have to be very conscious of the perception that people have of me. Right? So, and I'm only talking about this individual, yes, Kasim. Now, I get there are some people who are going to live a very quiet life. They're not generational thinkers. They're never going to make a huge impact on anybody's life apart from them and maybe their own kids. But for me, my life, I want it to be as I want to extend my reach as far as as high and as deep as I can possibly do, which means that I have to be very, very careful about the perception that people have of me. Because it impacts the connections that I can have with people, business opportunities, things like that. So let's go back to the first point, which is I could not see my wife in the same way. My wife can no longer be an extension of me because I, as Kasim, could not do porn or put my body out there. If you look at all my social media, I have no naked photos because to put your photos out there when you're naked portrays you in a certain way, whether you like it or not. People say, well, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but we do. All of us do judge a book by its cover, and I would say if you know anything about psychology, you will know that genuinely we take the way the mind works is that we will take at first what we see before we dig deeper. Meaning, if we see somebody who is doing OnlyFans, for most people, the first impression is they must have very low standards, they must be very promiscuous, they must have had a really bad upbringing, one of their parents being having dysfunctional relationship with one of their parents or both of their parents. That's automatically what the average person will presume. They won't say, oh, it's because it's personal choice and because you're getting a lot of money. That's not what people see. Now, we could talk about a conversation where we say, well, Cassim, you shouldn't be so judgmental and people shouldn't be so judgmental. And yeah, that's a different conversation. But the conversation that we're having now is that people do judge people based on what they see. Number two is family. I couldn't be with somebody who does OnlyFans because I have grandparents, right, on both sides of my family. I have aunties, I have uncles, I have four sisters, right? And the issue that I have with my missus doing OnlyFans is how can I allow her to do OnlyFans and then go and speak to my sisters and tell them about the kind of man they should be going after and the kind of relationships they should be going after and treat them that they should be independent, that they should be, that they're valuable and that they're important and they are special. How can I possibly tell them that when my partner, when my wife, when my spouse is out there putting her body out there for anybody else to see, for people to buy her, to people to have possession of and access to, to her body, which is something which is sacred, right? Our bodies are our temples. There's something which is sacred, which is why we cover them, which is why, we don't allow people to just have, most of us don't just have sex with just about anybody, right? Because our bodies are sacred. And so the issue that I would have is that I would then have to explain to like my grandparents and rumors get around and I would have to explain to my mum, and even further than that is my mum, if I'm being empathetic and I'm thinking from my mum's perspective, my mum's going to be thinking, what kind of son did I raise? I thought I did a really good job and I worked hard and I gave this boy morals, and yet his wife is an extension of him and my son is an extension of me. So I have an issue because my mum's going to be thinking, well, is this what I'm like? Did I teach my son that this is what is okay? And now we have a lot of other problems, right? Where now I'm going to be having to fight with my parents about the kind of wife that I have. And it's just like, do you see what I'm saying? We have major issues on our hands. Now, in that we could say, well, you shouldn't care what your parents say to you and you should do whatever you want and it is your life and it isn't about your parents. But the reality of life is we don't live alone. Okay, we are part of a community. We need support, right? We know that people who live incredible lives and who live happy lives and fulfilled lives and whole lives need support from their family, from their brothers, from their cousins, from their grandparents. So therefore, if you are going to be getting support from people around you, you're going to need to have a decent relationship with them. You're going to need to take their opinion into account. You're going to need to understand that your actions affect the reputation of the family, right? And one of the issues that I have today particularly is that I'm finding more and more and more that many of us guys, we're not thinking generationally. Like if you go back throughout history, pretty much every parent has made sacrifices so that their children could do better than them, right? They went and worked really hard so that they could buy a house, so that they could leave something to their children. They're really conscious of going outside of the marriage and having kids outside of the marriage or cheating because it would impact the family reputation. But we're living in a world today where I'm just finding that a lot of us guys don't realize that our behavior, our actions actually are going to impact the next generation, our children. Like, for example, I say to people all the time, today, if you get OnlyFans, even if you delete your account, it's already on the internet. Which means that if you, at the moment you might say, Cassim, I'm never going to have kids. If you do decide to have kids, you have a huge problem on your hands. Things to do with your kids later on being bullied in school, you being stopped to gaining access to working with anyone related to children, nurseries. Like for example, for me as Cassim, God forbid I was to ever do OnlyFans, and obviously in my job I get to speak with young people, work in schools, things like that. How in the world would a school? Can you imagine what parents would allow me to go to their school to speak to their children when they know that I do OnlyFans? It's just not going to happen, is it? And so I have to be vigilant of this. I have to think about this kind of stuff. And the thing is, this is why I say, like, you have to be so wise in thinking that you actually look ahead and look at the consequences of your choices. And the thing that I say to people is, look 10 years ahead. Any time that you're faced with a situation where the decision that you're going to make is controversial or is something which is outside of mainstream, look 10 years ahead and look at the consequences 10 years ahead. And if you don't, if you can't see 10 years ahead, then find people who've already made the decisions that you've made or 10 years ahead and look at their life before you think about making that decision. Because many times, like, one of the arguments that I hear a lot from people who do OnlyFans is, Kasim, I'm not going to have kids anyway. I'm not even close to my parents. Yes, but if you do decide, a lot of women, when they're 24, 25, 26, don't want to have kids. But when they get to 32, 33, 34, they do decide they do want to have kids. They do decide that they want to get married, right? Men might later on, they might break up with you, and then they want to later on work in a prison. They want to work with children, or they want to go in a position where they are having to work with people who are vulnerable. But today, organizations, I say to people that today your CV is your online presence. So people, like companies, will make fake accounts so that they can go on your Instagram, your Twitter, they can go on your Facebook to access what your history is like, right? And today, if anything is online, you can't escape it. People can find it if they really want to, right? So that's the second thing. And obviously, the next thing which I briefly talked about is business opportunities. If my spouse is doing OnlyFans, I have a major issue in that my business opportunities are going to be compromised. There are some companies which just will not work with anyone who has been involved with anything to do with OnlyFans or anything like that, or any of that kind of world. But even deeper than this is, one of the things that you have to actually think about is one of the precursors and the residual effects of OnlyFans is you're having to do with harassment, you're having to do with suing people. And I'm thinking, as Kasim, I don't want to have to deal with my wife's problems with being related to her being stalked, with harassment, with having protection orders in place. I just don't want to be dealing with that crap. We should be building a life where we are building businesses and doing stuff like that. And we don't, like, the cost that we're going to have on our relationship, and the pressure that it's going to put on our relationship, the harassment with you feeling unsafe, with men demanding things from you, is something that, do we really need that in our relationship? And I guess you have to choose. Do you want to prioritize your relationship, or do you want to prioritize money? Because what I'm finding more and more and more is that, and this is one of the inconvenient truths that I've learned, is that people, if the money is enough, will prioritize money over a relationship. Here's the issue. Money comes and goes. Relationships, finding the right person for you is not easy. Finding a person who gets you, who understands you, who has the same level of ambition as you, who has the same values as you, is a very difficult thing. And I'm finding that a lot of people are willing to forego that so that they can get money, whereas money comes and goes. And it's just something that I was thinking about. The last thing that I wrote down here is that there is a cutoff, but the price is so high. Meaning that a lot of people, as I've just said, are willing to pay the price where they say, well, Kasim, if I'm being paid every single month, I'm being paid 30, 40, 50K, then do you know what? I'm willing to suffer the residual costs of that. But my question to you is, and the thing that I would get you to think about is, there is a cutoff to OnlyFans, meaning there is a season. Just like if you are a basketball player or a footballer, there is a season when you make a lot of money, right? And clearly, if you're doing OnlyFans, one of the reasons why people, like, and I'm generalizing here, part of the attraction to OnlyFans is a lot of the people go there because the women are young, they're beautiful, they are sexy, they're hot. But there is a cutoff for that. Most women, when they get to 35, 36, 37, when they're mothers, they're not as fit. They just aren't. Now, we could talk about a conversation around where we shouldn't, a woman's beauty doesn't stop at 30 or 35, but the reality is that demand and beauty is being driven by the market, right? That's why you don't see many fit 35-year-olds or 40-year-olds on OnlyFans and porn videos, because that's not what people want. People want young, people want healthy, energetic, right? Like, that's what people genuinely, as a general rule, want. And so, as a result of that, there is a cutoff to your your demand in that arena, and you have to ask yourself: is the price going to be enough? Is what you're going to get in the period when you're doing amazing going to be enough to be able to make up for the price that you're going to have to pay? So let's say you do OnlyFans between 22 and let's say 28. So that's 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So that's 6 years. Now you have to ask yourself, is that 6 years worth the next from 28 until I'm 80 when I die? Or 90 or whenever it is? Because I'm going to have to pay the price for the next 50 years of some decisions that I made when I was in a 6-year period. And you have to ask yourself, because here's what I'm saying this. A lot of people who get involved in OnlyFans don't do it because it's a stepping stone. They don't do it so that they can save money, so that they can buy into companies, invest into their future, get a degree, etc. That's not why a lot of people get involved in OnlyFans. They're doing it so that they can get quick money, so that they can get the bag, the car, the house. Meaning it is not a stepping stone. It is not a long-term strategy that they're thinking about. Right? That's just the truth. Right? A lot of people are just doing it so that they can live a certain lifestyle. And you have to ask yourself, at the end of that 6 years, you're gonna have you're gonna have no money. Excuse me. You're gonna have no money or very little money. And you have to ask yourself, is it worth the price that you're gonna have to pay for the next 50, 60 years of your life? And for me, when I think about that, as my spouse, I can't. I just think the price is going to be so high for us to pay as a couple, that for our children, for our community, that I don't think it's worth it. So that's what I think about my spouse doing OnlyFans. What do you think, though? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let's have a conversation. Let's have a dialogue. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Comment below. Again, if you want to help support me, get me to 1,000 subscribers by June, please can you like and subscribe to my channel. It helps with the algorithm and showing this to other people. You'd be an absolute legend. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.